Talk about a protest vote. Italians completely redrawing their political landscape in a general election that boots the center-left from power, confirms the surge of the anti-establishment five-star movement, and sees the far right supplant Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia as the main player on the right. But good luck predicting who can cobble together a working coalition government and what voters want besides new faces to run their country. The populists themselves are unclear, toning down anti-EU rhetoric in the closing weeks of this bitter campaign. About all they agree on is they want to expel more immigrants. Who should Italy's president ask to form the next government? What's the agenda for the populists? And how will it impact Europe, where social democracy is in many parts under siege? And more broadly, could Italy be charting a new course? Or simply, is it a peninsula adrift at this point? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at an Italy that's, well, still very much up for grabs after Sunday's vote. With us to talk about it, Francesco Saracino, who teaches at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po.
Good evening.
Welcome back to the show. We want to welcome Giovanni Orsina, who teaches at Rome's Guido Carli Free University on Social Studies, LIUSS. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And from New York, Luigi Zingales of the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and on Twitter at the hashtag F24debate. Let's start with the latest. The former Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi, quitting the center-left's party leadership, but not politics altogether. This after the center-left's collapsed to 18%. Silvio Berlusconi, so far silent after a poor performance. And there you see this tale of an Italy cut in two. The parts in blue on that map are where the far-right Liga did best. The parts in yellow where the five-star movement did the best. Francesco Saracino, when you look at this map of Italy, what does it tell you?
It's a revolution. We saw that coming because already the election of 2013 was a very good election for the five-star movement. But it's clear that you don't see any red there. There was the center of Italy, starting from Tuscany all the way up to Bologna and to the Emilia-Romagna, that was all red just 5 years ago. And this is, now we have a few small islands of red. The political landscape has completely changed. I would say that the five-star movements did very well, but this is not the real news. The real news is that you say the fact that the Northern League did very well. So the fact that what we in Italy call with some pudor center-right is now clearly a right-wing party, which will make things very complicated because it will be harder for them to form an alliance.
We're going to talk about who can form an alliance. First of all, in most democracies, where you turn first is the top vote-getter, and that is the five-star movement. They have a 31-year-old leader. He says he's ready and eager.
We feel a responsibility to provide Italy with a government. And first of all, it must be noted that today, the coalitions don't have the numbers to govern. I want to state clearly that we are open to debates with all political forces.
Giovanni Orsina, could Luigi Di Maio be the next Prime Minister of Italy?
Well, first of all, just let me 1 second get back to your previous question about the geographical division of Italy, which I found very worrisome indeed. Italy has always been a divided country when it comes to society, culture, and the economy. And traditionally, it was politics.
Help!
Yes?
The connection is lost. The connection.
All right, we seem to have problems with the connection with New York, but we'll try to have that fixed. Giovanni Orsina.
Oh, yeah, sorry. What I was saying is that there is politics traditionally has always been bridging this geographical division in Italy. Now, if politics stops bridging that and starts reproducing that division, that can create troubles to Italy as a country. So that
Wait, create trouble to Italy as a country? What do you mean?
I'm meaning that if the north and the south of Italy are very different when it comes to society and economics, and this division is expressed in political terms, and you get a political party that is strong in the north and another that is strong in the south, then trying to bridge the socioeconomic gap becomes more difficult. And I think this is one of the most worrying results of this election, that there is no longer a political force that is able to bridge that geographical gap.
Yeah, because let me just pick up on that point, Giovanni Orsina, because a few years back, Matteo Salvini, his party was called the Northern League, and they were, in fact, for autonomy, if not independence from southern Italy. Is that still a possibility? There could be a breakup of Italy?
I wouldn't say that, because, of course, Salvini's league has changed. But when the League was a northern force, it was in an alliance with Berlusconi's Forza Italia, and Forza Italia was able to be a real national force. So today Salvini tries to make the League a truly national force, but in the south the five-star movement is particularly strong. So I'm not saying that this is getting back to secession or that kind of, let's say, result anytime soon. What I'm saying is that in time, this might create troubles in trying to keep the various regions together.
So can Di Maio be the next prime minister?
And that's coming to your original question. My answer is yes, that is a possibility. Is not so, let's say, simple, because of course this means that Di Maio's five-star movement will be able to find an ally, and it's not so easy for them to find an ally. And of course this opens up an entirely new chapter, which is who can enter into a coalition with the five-star movement. That being said, today I don't think this is an option that we can rule out. So I think that we must take the option of Di Maio being prime minister into the pale of the actual possibilities.
Into the tale of the actual possibilities? Francesco Saracino, you agree?
Yes, I do. I mean, if you look at the numbers, there are three possible options. Two of them involve the five-star movement. So the first option, which is the one which does not involve the five-star movement, is that the coalition of Salvini and Berlusconi they will be short of majority for between...
That's off the table.
No, they will be short of majority by 20 or 30 votes. So it's not impossible that they manage to lure some of the other party's members into joining their alliance. It happened many times in the past in Italy. I mean, it's called transformismo in Italian. So that is an option. Transformismo. It's a way that you are elected with a party and then you end up in another majority. So that is a possibility. But A, they must take a large number of people. And second, the fact that Salvini will be most plausibly the leader moves them to the right, so it's harder to call in other people. So that is the first option, and it's not very likely. The other two options involve the five-star movement. So the five-star movement, now that Renzi is gone, maybe, will manage to form an alliance with
pick up on that maybe in a moment.
Democratic Party, and so it will be a five-star government with external support from the left, or a five-star government with external support from the League. But that is more unlikely because, I don't know if Orsina agrees with me, he's much more expert than me actually on politics, because Salvini is too strong to just support from the outside the five-star movement.
All right, we're going to pick up both those options and go around the table on them. Let's pick up on the first one, because that's something that we've been hearing a lot ever since the results came in Sunday night. The five-star movement, which again has never been in power before, it's a relatively new party, picking off enough voters from the enough lawmakers from the Democratic Party, from the center left, to be able to govern. Now, earlier we heard Matteo Renzi, the former prime minister, who'd been heading the campaign for the PD, in which failed to get, again, 18% of the vote in Sunday's election for the Democratic Party, and Renzi resigning, but insisting there cannot be a coalition with the five-star movement.
Form a government without us. know that our place in this legislature is in the opposition. This is where the Democratic Party will be.
Now, before I turn to Luigi Zingalis in New York, let me first go to our correspondent in Rome, Josephine McKenna. Josephine, actually, Renzi didn't specifically name the five-star movement, but it's obvious that he's going to hang on and be caretaker leader of the party, what, to make sure that there cannot be this kind of deal?
Look, I think at this point everything's up for grabs, and I think it's a little bit early to say that there won't be any kind of deal, as our commentators have already said. We may see some transformismo, we might see people shifting sides, we might see some disenchanted members of the Democratic Party decide to throw their hat in the ring with the five-star movement. So I think it's a little early, even though he seems convinced that there won't be that kind of deal. He's going to be out the door pretty soon. So I think it's still a very fluid situation.
Out the door, Luigi Zingalis, but not completely going away. He said at that press conference earlier, I'm going to stay on as senator for Florence. What do you think of that? Luigi Zingalis? All right, we'll try to reconnect there with New York City. Giovanni Orsina, your thoughts on Matteo Renzi? Can he still be lingering there in the background, or does he have to leave politics completely?
I think it is quite clear he has no intention of leaving politics. So what he did is to resign as Secretary General, but he did that just 1 hour ago, so I couldn't really follow exactly what he said. But according to what La Repubblica was reporting, he said, yes, I'm resigning, but I will resign after the government is formed. Now, this is a very clear way to say I'm going to lead the negotiations to form the government, and I will make sure that the Democratic Party is not going to enter into a coalition with anyone, let alone the five-star movement. So it is very clear, at least from these signs, that this resignation is not what it seems, an actual full resignation. He has formally resigned, but still is going to lead the negotiations. Now,
will his own party stand for it? Remember, he became the leader of his party by doing sort of a palace coup inside of the center left. Could the same thing happen to him at this point?
You mean another kind of coup inside the party?
Yes.
Well, that was when he was a young rising star, not after 2 defeats on a row. So now I think the party is going to really think about having him as Secretary General. So it is not so easy for him now to stay on. But what is quite clear is that he has created parliamentary groups that are very loyal to him. Now, the major question mark is for how long will they remain loyal to him? Above all, when these negotiations begin. As Josephine was saying before, it's very early, and I think we are going to look forward to a lot of maneuvering in the next weeks, and a lot of things may happen that today we cannot even imagine.
Francesco Saracino?
I agree. I think he will. I also didn't listen to him, because I was coming here. But from what I learned here, it's clear that he wants to make sure that the party will remain in opposition, so that any possible alliance will be blocked. Whether it will succeed, it will depend on the others. It's true that he managed to. The party is smaller, but it's all Renzi compatible, if you want, in size. They are. He chose the candidates. He put in all in the seats where he was sure to win people who were loyal. So the party the parliamentarians will be very united behind him. So that is certainly a truth. That said, if he said he will resign, and if the minority manages to find an agreement with some other parties, most probably the five-star movement, I don't think he will be able to resist that. So, but I mean, who knows? That's the problem. Who knows?
Who knows indeed? I understand we have the connection back with New York City. We're going to cross to Luigi Zingales just after the break, just a very quick one. Stay with us because we're going to look at the other scenarios at this very up-in-the-air stage after Italy's general election. You're watching the France 24 debate.
France in Focus, presented by Tom Burgess-Watson.
It is the largest construction site in all of Europe, the largest in the history of France. It's called Grand Paris, and it's going to change the entire face of the French capital. We tell you all about it in this week's edition of France in Focus.
France in Focus on France 24 and France24.com. You might watch France 24 in English, but don't forget, France 24 is also broadcast in French, Arabic, and Spanish.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a las noticias de France 24.
Available on cable and satellite systems and online media in France and around the world. Revisited, presented by Stuart Norval.
Transnistria, a Russian-speaking enclave in Moldova, where Romanian is the official language. A breakaway republic living in the shadow of Moscow. An uncertain future has driven locals away from the separatist province. The international community has not recognized it. The economy is depressed. Censorship is widespread. Transnistria and its capital Tiraspol is increasingly caught between Europe and Russia.
Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.
Welcome back. Before we resume the France 24 debate, some of the stories we're following for you in the newsroom at this hour. We're going to be taking a look at the latest developments out of Italy, where the head of the center-left says he's stepping down, but only once a new government has been named. Our place in the next legislature will be in the opposition, says Matteo Renzi, that's trying to pour cold water on any hopes of some kind of grand coalition or a coalition with the Five-Star Movement after an election where populists routed the mainstream parties. 1 week later than promised, the first aid convoys to enter the Syrian rebel enclave of eastern Ghouta, but the government bars most health supplies and the shelling continues. At least 44 civilians killed, say monitors. The French foreign minister in Tehran, Jean-Yves Le Drian, supporting the 2015 nuclear deal, but pressing his host to curb their ballistic missile program. And Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington, as trouble mounts at home, a former aide becomes the third associate of Israel's prime minister to turn state's evidence as part of corruption probes. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're trying to look at the dust settle, but it hasn't really, on Italy's general election, one that's redrawn the political map of the peninsula. With us to talk about it, Francesco Saracino, who teaches at the French Political Science Institute Sciences Po, also senior economist at the OFCE think tank. Luigi Zingales, economist as well at the University of Chicago, and host of the Capital Isn't podcast. Thank you for being with us from New York City. Giovanni Orsina, who teaches at LUISS Guido Carli in the University in Rome, and France 24 correspondent Josephine McKenna is with us as well. When it comes to Italy, we're talking about the mainstream parties getting routed. We talked about the center-left. The writing may be on the wall for Silvio Berlusconi, or, if you will, on the chest of the feminine activist who ambushed him as he cast his vote in Milan. She'd had "Berlusconi, you have expired" scrawled across her torso, newspaper Il Tempo, using a more familiar turn of phrase to headline "What a mess." Is that how you would translate "what a mess"? And is that roughly what that means in Italian? Che bordello. Luigi Zingales, let me ask you, is this now definitely the end of Silvio Berlusconi?
I hope so. And it says Berlusconi has been given for dead for a long time and has always been able to resurrect. This time seems that the time has come. And but I think that the future might not be better, but might be worse.
How so?
I think that unless the Democratic Party changes its course, the most likely coalition will be a basically right coalition headed by Salvini. And I think that this is unlikely to address the legitimate concerns that Italy had. I think that everybody has said this is a protest vote. It's obvious that it's a protest vote. The question is, we're protesting against what? We're protesting against a Europe that has abandoned us with the problem of immigration without providing any help. A Europe that let Italy be waterboarded during the 2011 and 12 crisis without providing much help. A Europe that does not provide any mechanism of risk sharing, if not for banks. And a government that has been very slow in addressing the problem, the crisis of the banks. And now, most people don't know, but the League was very much involved with many of these banks in the northern part of Italy. And so it's not really a party of change who is likely to change anything, and will have the crucial support of Berlusconi, so maintaining the control over the business environment that Berlusconi cares to maintain. So I think it's going to be difficult to have a change with this right-wing government.
Yeah, Matteo Salvini, head of the far right, he, by the way, has reneged on calling for a referendum to leave the euro. At least he did so during the campaign. However, listen to the tone once the polls had closed Sunday night.
I continue to reiterate, and I've never changed my ideas on this, that the euro was and remains a mistake. We are clear that the system of a single currency is destined to fail. Not because I want it to, but because that's what the facts say, what good sense says, and what the economy says.
Now, he shied away from calling for a referendum during the campaign. Now that the voting is over, Luigi Zingales, if Salvini was the prime minister, how would it go when it comes to the euro and to Europe?
So I think that any prime minister will not want to leave the euro cold turkey, because this is extremely costly from many points of view. The fact that the euro is not being a success for Italy is unfortunately in the facts. And I don't think that the solution for Italy is to have continuous devaluations. However, unfortunately, Italy was hit by a number of shocks at the time where they lost the flexibility given by the exchange rate. And that combination has been quite costly from an industrial point of view. And I think that Salvini reflects that resentment, which is very common among northern entrepreneurs.
Matteo Salvini, what more can we say about him, Josephine McKenna? Is he prime ministerial material?
Well, I think he's run a pretty gutsy, rigorous campaign, and he's certainly demonstrated that he has leadership potential, just in the way that he's increased the vote in such a short amount of time, getting up to 18%. But he really comes across as an energetic, young, gutsy kind of politician, and he wants that job pretty badly. I think he's still going to have a bit of a fight to get there, but I think he'd have a lot of support amongst his voters for that position. I still think it's a controversial move because he's so outspoken about Islam. He's been very outspoken about migrants and very divisive about migrants, particularly since we saw that shooting in Macerata, the neo-fascist supporter who shot and injured 6 Africans at the early stages of the campaign. And Matteo Salvini was very quick to exploit that for his own ends. And he has to demonstrate that he's a leader for all Italians and not a divisive character.
Giovanni Orsina, the platform of the Liga is closer to the National Front here in France than it is to the conservative Les Républicains party. Does that mean that far-right ideas have gone mainstream in Italy?
In many ways, certainly, this means that the entire political scene in Italy has slided to the right, and that right-wing voters are now even more to the right. Of course, this is also connected to the fact that Salvini is 40 odds and Berlusconi is 81. So for many right-wing voters, there was not really that much of a choice because of their different age, their different energies, and the fact that Berlusconi governed several times with no great success, whereas Salvini has never governed. That being said, certainly the issue of migration has, I would say, radicalized, moved voters and public opinion further to the right. Not only right-wing voters, also left-wing voters can be quite, quote, authoritarian when it comes to migration. And as Josephine was saying, Salvini has been very quick and very skillful as a politician in jumping on that issue.
And by the way, this side of the Alps, we're hearing similar rhetoric. France's president speaking in the company of Quebec's premier earlier, drawing lessons from the vote in Italy.
I would note that in the world we live in, great ideas can be defended, but they cannot be defended by ignoring the brutality of the context. And today, Italy has undeniably suffered from the pressure it has lived under for months and months, in the context of the huge pressure from migration. We must keep that in mind for our part.
Francesco Saracino, is that a dog whistle message to those who'd be tempted to vote National Front in this country?
No, I think Macron said it right. I mean, Italy has been left alone since at least 2015, and of course, it's a question of pressure that is felt more than it's actually real pressure. I mean, all the data show that there is no real migration problem in Italy, but the sentiment we have of being abandoned, the fact that Macron, as one of his first acts as a president, was to close the border in Ventimiglia, and so I just has to say, okay, this is your problem. Like the migrants are not the French problem, are the Italian problem. Now, I mean, he's saying that, but he should have acted differently a few months ago. Italy has been left alone, and Salvini was very skillful in taking advantage of that. As Zingales was saying, the euro has been mismanaged. We've been talking many times just here on why I think the euro has been really poorly managed. And the easiest solution to this mismanagement is to break it, while there are more difficult solutions, in my opinion, more promising solutions that are not in Salvini's interest, because, of course, he wants to feed the protest and to take advantage of it.
Wants to feed the protest and take advantage of it. Is it a turn for all of Europe? Will Macron be... is this an election that's going to weigh on Macron? Because, we were talking earlier about Matteo Renzi being washed up. Matteo Renzi is 43 years old. And Macron's only been in power for a year. Is he going to look at what's going on in Italy and think, well, I better have more of a strong-arm stance when it comes to issues like immigration?
You remember when Macron was elected, there was a sort of a short moment of euphoric. Okay, populism is dead, right? We defeated populism thanks to Macron. Populism is not dead. First of all, it was not dead in France, where Marine Le Pen got to the second round and got 30-something% of the vote. I don't remember exactly, and it's certainly not dead in the rest of Europe. So that is a problem. I mean, Europe, if it wants to survive, and so in this sense, I think it might be a bell that is ringing. If Europe wants to survive, it needs to change course. And as Zingales was saying, we need more solidarity. The latest development in the Franco-German, okay, now the German government just was formed. I mean, it was still not formed. So, yeah. But the latest development in the Franco-German discussion about the future of Europe go in the sense of still more burdens on each of the countries in isolation. So risk sharing is becoming less and less a platform for change. So Europe is not being so, there is no solidarity in Europe. And there will be no solidarity if we keep going ahead like this. In that sense, the Salvini will always win if we go in that direction.
The Salvinis will always win, Giovanni Orsina?
Not necessarily, but it takes politicians that are able to address those same questions with different answers. If the questions are there, I mean, they are calling for answers. If mainstream politics is unable to give answers, then it is up to these kind of politicians. Now, I believe, coming back to your
I was going to ask you on that point, because what's surprising for us watching this from the outside is there's no left wing anymore, it seems, in Italy.
That's not just an Italian issue. I mean, one could wonder what kind of left wing is left in, for instance, France, or what kind of left wing. I mean, in Germany, the SPD is more or less on the same level in the opinion polls with Alternative für Deutschland. So there is a major problem of the left everywhere in every advanced democracy, because the left became the party of basically cosmopolitan elites in many ways. Now, I don't want to push it too far, but certainly if you look, for instance, at who's voting for the Partito Democratico in Italy, in the last elections in Rome, only the two central districts of Rome voted for the Partito Democratico, and all the peripheral districts voted for the Five-Star Movement. It's a clear sign that it is now the economic well-off and the cultural elites that are voting for the left in Italy, and I think this is also happening in many other countries.
Yeah, and as Italians were voting, Germany Sunday was sealing more than 5 months of coalition building. So listen to the answer when the German government spokesperson was asked if the Chancellor had any tips for Italy when it came to forming its government.
In principle, one would wish that it'll take less than 6 months, but I don't want to say anything more about that.
All right, a bit of German humor for you there, Luigi Zingales. In that regards, it seems, is it a question of people don't like the policies, or is it a question of people don't like the faces? There's a sentiment in Italian politics of it being a revolving door all the time.
I think they don't like both. We have to put things in context, because at the end of the day, what is surprising to me is actually that Salvini got fewer votes than Le Pen in France. And given how poorly the economy has been doing in Italy, I think you will expect much more. I think that we should be thankful to the Five-Star Movement for having intercepted and captured a lot of this revolt that otherwise would have gone to Salvini. So I think that there is a sense of dissatisfaction, both with the elite that is being governed in this country, and also with the performance, and also with the European impact or the impact that Europe has on Italian politics. Let's remember that Merkel was actually blessing Berlusconi. I was telling everybody every vote given to Berlusconi is a vote given to Salvini. And but the Merkel was actually endorsing Berlusconi as the savior, forgetting what he has done in the past and who was he allied with.
Josephine McKenna, your thoughts on that? And when you think back to the campaign we've just had, and you look at, we've talked about Salvini, but do we have a better idea now of what the Five-Star Movement stands for?
Well, I think it's very confusing. On the one hand, it seems to be pro-environment. It wants to offer a universal income that some people here think is a mistake. It's going to be too costly, and how on earth are they going to do that and still pare back the deficit? It's still, I think, a very confusing sort of picture about what they stand for. There's a lot of ambiguity. They want to create jobs. They want to help small businesses. But will they be able to do that? Will they be able to follow through on those promises? What was interesting during this campaign was talking to people on the streets, of all ages, young people and even older people said to me, we've tried Berlusconi, we've tried Renzi, and now we're willing to take a chance on the five-star movement. And that was also interesting to see that in Rome, where there's still a lot of disgust and opposition to what's going on with Virginia Raggi, the five-star mayor who's running the city or supposedly running the city.
Supposedly running the city. You heard Giovanni Orsina a moment ago, Josephine, talking about how it's really only the center of Rome that voted for the left or the center left. What does that mean as far as where the politics are going in the rest of the country? What do Italians want?
Well, you only have to visit a town like Ventimiglia, which really draws on a lot of tourism for its survival. And they have had hundreds of migrants camping in the riverbed, camping on the beaches. These migrants that are stopped at the border or turned back once they cross into France, those sorts of issues are creating enormous problems for small communities. And I also went to the town of Macerata where that shooting occurred quite recently. Now, that's a town that's terribly upset and divided about what's happened there. And people were telling me that they feel that the social fabric is under strain. It's not just about immigrants. It's not just about joblessness. They just feel that the whole country is under some sort of stress and looking for a powerful solution to try and bring people together and also offer incentives to create a different kind of future.
Trying to bring people together, yet the result we said at the outset is dividing Italy even more than it was before. You remember a couple of years back when there was this proposition, Francesco Saracino, of a referendum, because you have this system in Italy where you have a Senate and a lower house, which basically do the same thing almost. There was an idea to reform it. It failed. Is it possible to do a big reform in Italy?
Let's say that this referendum, we don't have to go back to that. The referendum was lost, I think, for reasons that went well beyond the actual content of the referendum. It was a referendum on Renzi, and Renzi was already disappointing the Italians. So it was a first stage of his defeat that was completed today, I would say, yesterday. So that is, but I would like to, I think it's interesting what Orsina said. The left disappeared, but not the left voters. And where did they go? And these left voters did not go to abstention because the participation rate remained pretty high.
73%?
Yes, just 1 point lower than it was in 2013. So it's decent turnout. So probably these voters went most probably to the five-star movement. And this is, to go back
They did.
They did, right? So what I think...
They did. There are the first studies, and they demonstrate that actually the PD lost a lot of votes to the five-star movement.
Which means, and thank you very much. So which means, that I believe that if there is a social democrat proposition that comes out with sufficient charisma and credibility, the left might reappear even in the parliament. And this is true for Italy, this is true for France, that's 7 months after the election still didn't find this credible left, and this is true for Germany. So the left and the social democrat problems and needs are still there. It's just the representation that is missing. It's what Orsina was saying. What is missing is politicians who have a different answer from Salvini to the problems that Salvini is taking advantage for.
Does such an animal exist, Luigi Zingalos?
I don't think anytime soon. This is not just a problem of Italy. We see everywhere that the left has problem intercepting the needs of the people and has become too intellectual, too concerned about things that don't concern the ordinary human beings. And the only one who somehow succeeded is Corbyn, and he took a very leftist turn. So I don't expect a resurrection of the left. In fact, I think that the best thing that the left could do, or the PD could do in this moment for the country, is actually try to form a coalition with the five-star movement rather than left Salvini run the country.
Oh, something...
I agree. I think there is... The five-star movement is somewhere in the middle. It has everything inside it because it's collecting protests from all the sides, from the right and from the left.
All right,
so whether it will go to the left or to the right, it depends on who they will form an alliance with. And if the left retreats into opposition, we give the five-star movement to the same type of policies that Salvini would bring about.
And the horse trading has only just begun. Francesca Saracino, I want to thank you. I thank Luigi Zingales for being with us from New York, Giovanni Orsina in Rome, as well as our correspondent Josephine McKenna. Stay with us. Media Watch is next.